All right, so imagine this. You've got this dynasty, the Qin, seemingly untouchable, right? Ruled by an emperor, the son of heaven, meant to command everything. And then, bam, it all falls apart practically overnight. Wild, right?
It really is the speed of it all. You have this massive empire, and boom, it implodes. It makes you think about those historical tipping points, where things could have gone in a totally different direction.
And that's exactly where we're diving in today. The moment Liu Bang enters Xianyang, the Qin capital, it's a total turning point. This is where we see the Han Dynasty really begin to take shape.
And what makes it even more interesting is that we're not just speculating. We have these incredible historical accounts to draw from, these excerpts we have, what's being called tejus. They pull directly from the records of the Grand Historian, the Shiji, and the Book of Han, the Hanshu, talk about primary sources.
We're talking about the real deal here. These aren't just some dry timelines. These records tell us about the people involved, the decisions they made, the consequences, the whole shebang. We're going to try and paint a clear picture of how this all went down.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the why, not just the what, and the impact of those choices on the course of Chinese history. It's huge.
Exactly. So no more beating around the bush. Let's get into it. Liu Bang marches into Xianyang. Sounds almost too easy, doesn't it? How did that even happen? I mean, this was the heart of the Qin Empire.
Well, the historical records confirm that it was, relatively speaking, a smooth entry. You have to remember, the Qin Dynasty was already teetering on the brink of collapse. And Prince Xiang, the last Qin ruler, well, he saw the writing on the wall.
So rather than going down in a blaze of glory, he basically said, all right, I'm out.
Pretty much. The sources pinpoint this to the winter of what became the first year of Emperor Gaozu of Han. That timing right there, it really underscores the immediacy of the transition. The Qin ends, the Han begins, all in the blink of an eye.
Wow, that's incredible. So this mighty dynasty just surrenders. But here's something interesting. While Liu Bang's generals are probably busy thinking about all the riches, the spoils of war, right? We hear about Shao. He's doing something completely different. He's securing government maps and records. Why was that so important?
This is where you see Zhao. He's strategic genius. He understood that knowledge is power, literally.
Yeah.
While everyone else was focused on immediate gratification, gold, treasures, all that, Shao, he was thinking long-term. He secured the blueprints of the empire.
It's like he walked into the ultimate library. He had access to everything: geography, population, resources, administration. I mean, that's a goldmine of information.
Exactly. And this gave Liu Bang a huge advantage. It allowed him to understand the complexities of the empire he was about to inherit. It's like having a cheat sheet for ruling a vast and diverse territory.
Talk about a head start. So picture this.
Right.
Liu Bang is in Xianyang. He's surrounded by the opulence, the Qin palaces, the treasures, everything. What was his reaction? Was he disgusted by this display of extravagance?
Well, the sources paint a more human picture. Remember, Liu Bang didn't come from a life of privilege. So to suddenly find himself in this world of luxury, it must have been overwhelming. The records suggest he was pretty impressed, maybe even a little bit seduced by it all.
So the temptation to stay put and enjoy the spoils of victory must have been enormous. I can't say I blame him.
Absolutely, it's a very human reaction. And it's worth noting, Liu Bang didn't necessarily have this burning hatred for the Qin. His involvement in the rebellion was kind of a matter of circumstance, so the allure of Xianyang would have been strong.
But history rarely lets you just relax and enjoy the good times, does it? Enter Fan Kuai, always ready with some blunt advice. What did he have to say about Liu Bang's new palace life?
Fan Kuai, ever the pragmatist, cut right to the chase. His famous question, does Duke Pei want to possess the whole country or just be a wealthy man, gets to the heart of the matter. He's basically saying, hey, indulging in luxury is what brought the Qin down. Don't make the same mistake. He urges Liu Bang to leave the palaces and head back to their base at Bashan.
A stark choice. Short-term pleasure versus long-term ambition. Did Liu Bang listen right away?
Not exactly. Xianyang had its hooks in him. It took Zhang Liang, Liu Bang's brilliant strategist, to offer a more persuasive argument.
Ah, Zhang Liang, the master of the long game. What was his take on the situation?
Zhang Liang agreed with Fan Kuai, but approached it from a different angle. He pointed out that the Qin didn't collapse because they were poor or lacked power. They fell because of their tyranny. He used a really interesting analogy saying, honest advice is often unpleasant, like poisonous medicine. It's bitter, but it ultimately heals.
Poisonous medicine. That's a strange way to put it. I thought the saying was about good medicine being bitter, not poisonous medicine.
That's how it's often understood today. But the actual words used by Zhang Liang, as recorded in the Shiji and Hanshu, were indeed poisonous medicine. And it's not a mistake or a later change either. The texts even reference older works, like the Rites of Zhu, where physicians would collect poisonous medicine for specific treatments.
Huh, that's interesting. So it's like the idea that something harmful, if used correctly, can actually have a positive effect.
Exactly. The ancient understanding of medicine recognized that many powerful remedies could be toxic if misused. So Zhang Liang's point was that sometimes the best advice, the advice that will truly save you, might be hard to swallow.
That adds a whole new layer of meaning to his words. So both Fan Kuai with his straight talk and Zhang Liang with his strategic and philosophical approach are telling Liu Bang to get out of Xianyang, and eventually he does withdraw to Beshang.
That's right. The withdrawal is a historical fact. But the sources also hint that Liu Bang's relationship with the Qin treasures might have been a bit more complicated than a complete rejection.
What do you mean?
Well, the Shiji, later on, talks about the incredibly generous gifts Liu Bang gave out. For example, he bestowed a whopping 40,000 caddies of gold on Chen Ping just for his work as a spy. That's an insane amount of wealth, and it had to come from somewhere.
It sounds like Liu Bang might have dipped into the Qin treasury even if he didn't stay in the palace itself.
It's a possibility. And then there's his behavior later on, in Pengcheng, which is described as pretty lavish and indulgent. So the picture of Liu Bang as this paragon of austerity, well, it might need some adjusting.
So it's not as black and white as some might make it seem. It adds a bit of gray to Liu Bang's character, right?
Definitely. And this complexity makes him a more fascinating figure.
So why move to Beshang at all if he wasn't totally rejecting the wealth of Xianyang? Was it just a strategic location, being right outside the city?
That's part of it, but it's also where we see the implementation of the three-point law in November of that year. Liu Bang calls together the local elders, the influential people, and announces this simplified legal code.
A code that basically said, death penalty for murder, punishment based on the severity for injury and theft, and that's it. All those other harsh Qin laws, gone.
It was a bold move, and the people loved it. They saw it as a huge relief after years under the Qin's strict legal system. It's portrayed in some historical accounts as this moment of benevolence triumphing over tyranny.
And this also happened to be a brilliant strategic move for Liu Bang, wouldn't you say? I mean, he secures the support of the most prosperous region of the former Qin Empire, giving him a solid economic base for the future.
It was a shrewd move for sure. It provided stability and resources just when he needed them. And the commentator Wang Fuzi even saw this as a pivotal moment that paved the way for the prosperous Wenjing reign decades later. He argued that Liu Bang understood the importance of gaining the people's support and not just exploiting them.
So, a win-win situation. Mercy and good governance lead to long-term success.
That's the traditional view. But our source also presents a more critical perspective. He questions whether Liu Bang's motivations were purely about compassion.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, let's not forget that Liu Bang wasn't always a saint. He had a history of being ruthless, even ordering massacres in some cities. So this alternative view suggests that the three-point law might have been more about consolidating his power and securing the resources of the Guanzhong region. It's like he was setting up his own personal savings account for the future.
So not necessarily about being a nice guy, but about securing a power base.
Right. And it also raises an interesting point. Did the people of Guanzhong actually see the Qin laws as being that harsh? They had lived under a legalist system for generations, ever since the Xianyang reforms. Maybe their main fear wasn't harsh laws, but the potential for revenge from the other eastern states after the Qin's fall.
So Liu Bang offering the simplified law code was a way of saying, hey, things are going to be different now. No more reprisals.
Exactly, a way to bring stability and order to a chaotic situation.
And what about the decision to base himself in Beshang, just outside of Xianyang? Was that purely strategic, a way to keep an eye on the city and its riches?
That's definitely part of it. It gave him a vantage point, but it also allowed him to maintain a certain distance from the political complexities of the former capital. It's like a form of delayed gratification.
Okay, so Liu Bang has made some smart moves, established a decent legal system, and set up camp just outside Xianyang. He probably assumed he'd naturally become the ruler of the Guanzhong region, right? He got there first, after all.
It seems logical, right? But there's a catch. He might not have known about a crucial agreement that had already been made.
Oh, what agreement?
Xiang Yu, the supreme commander of the rebel forces, had promised the Guanzhong region, that is, the kingdom of Yang, to someone else. Zhang Han, the former Qin general, who had switched sides.
Hold on, King of Yang, why not King of Qin?
This is where symbolism comes into play. The title King of Yang was likely a deliberate choice by Xiang Yu. It distances him from the hated Qin legacy and gives him more control over how the region is perceived.
Interesting. So it was a way to reward Zheng Han without directly associating him with the Qin. And giving this title to Zheng Han, wasn't it a risky move by Xiang Yu? After all, Zheng Han still controlled a sizable former Qin army, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Zheng Han had around 200,000 troops under his command. It was a calculated risk by Xiang Yu, a way to integrate this powerful force into the new order.
But this sets up a major conflict. You have Liu Bang, assuming he's in charge, and then you have Xiang Yu promising the same territory to Zheng Han. Two tigers on one mountain, as they say.
A recipe for disaster. And to make matters worse, there were other tensions brewing within the anti-Qin alliance, especially concerning how the surrendered Qin soldiers were being treated.
Right, these soldiers, they had laid down their arms, hoping for peace. But were they treated as equals?
Not really. They were often mistreated and humiliated by the forces of the other feudal lords, seen as the enemy, even though they had surrendered. They faced scorn, discrimination, some were even treated like slaves.
That's terrible. They were caught in this awful position. They had surrendered, but they weren't accepted by their former enemies. And they probably feared reprisals if the anti-Qin alliance somehow fell apart.
They were in a no-win situation. They feared the vengeance of the feudal lords and worried about what would happen to their families if they were seen as traitors. It's a testament to the deep divisions and mistrust that existed even within the victorious alliance.
And the source also points out that the Qin army, despite its strength, lacked a certain kind of loyalty.
Right. The Qin state had focused on rewarding achievements on the battlefield, not on building a strong sense of cultural or ethical unity. This made them very efficient, but it also meant that their loyalty was transactional, not deeply rooted. It's like what Zunzi, the philosopher, argued later on. True strength comes from morality and social cohesion, not just rewards and punishments.
So this lack of deeper loyalty within the Qin army made them even more vulnerable in this unstable situation.
Definitely. They were like a house of cards waiting to collapse. And all of this unrest, all this resentment, it eventually reached Xiang Yu.
And his reaction, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly merciful.
It was brutal. Faced with the logistical nightmare of managing a huge number of potentially rebellious Qin troops, Xiang Yu made a chilling decision. He ordered their execution.
The massacre at Xianyang, it's described as over 200,000 Qin soldiers being buried alive, a horrific act of violence against surrendered soldiers.
The source clarifies that the term buried alive likely refers to a mass killing followed by burial. It's still a horrifying act, a stark reminder of the brutality of war and the ruthlessness of power struggles.
Even if the exact numbers might have been exaggerated for political reasons, it's clear this was a major event, one that Liu Bang later used to demonize Xiang Yu.
It was a turning point, a defining moment of cruelty, and it happened in Xianyang, a place that later became infamous for this event. It's in modern-day Henan province, a region that was once part of the former Han state. It's even mentioned in Du Fu's famous poem, The Officer of Xianyang.
Wow. That connection to Du Fu's work adds another layer to this tragedy. It's a reminder that these historical events weren't just abstract happenings, they took place in real locations, impacting real people. It makes you wonder, could Xiang Yu have handled this differently? Could he have taken a page from Liu Bang's playbook and tried to integrate these soldiers, offered them some kind of amnesty?
It's a question that historians still debate. On the one hand, yes, it's hard to justify such a brutal massacre. But the source also presents the counter-argument. Xiang Yu faced immense logistical challenges. How do you feed and manage 200,000 potentially hostile soldiers?
Plus, he had to consider the morale of his own troops. Imagine how they would have felt seeing their former enemies being treated leniently.
Exactly. It was a complex situation, a choice between two difficult options. But regardless of the rationale, the massacre at Xi'an had a profound impact on the unfolding events.
And the timing of it all is striking. It happened almost simultaneously with Liu Bang enacting his three-point law in the Guanzhong region. Talk about a contrast in leadership styles.
It's a stark difference. While Xiang Yu resorted to brute force, Liu Bang was trying to build a base of support through a more moderate approach.
Now, imagine you're Liu Bang. You've just implemented these relatively lenient laws, you've got the support of the local population, and then news arrives about the massacre at Xi'an. And on top of that, you find out that Xiang Yu has promised your territory to Zheng Han. What do?
Well, what Liu Bang does next might seem surprising. He decides to defend Hangu Pass, essentially blocking the other allied forces from entering the Guanzhong region.
That's a bold move, essentially turning against the very allies who helped overthrow the Qin. What was he thinking?
The most likely trigger was the news about Zhang Han being made the king of Yang. It was a direct challenge to Liu Bang's ambitions. He saw it as a betrayal.
So defending Hangar Pass, this strategically vital gateway to the west, was a defensive move, a way to protect what he saw as rightfully his.
Exactly. He had to make a stand. And he received advice to fortify the pass and even conscript more troops from the Guanzhong region. It was a gamble, but he felt he had no choice.
But let's face it, going up against Xiang Yu was a huge risk. I mean, at this point, Xiang Yu was still the top dog, right? He had the military might, the political influence. Liu Bang was, well, still an underdog.
That's true. In early November of the first year of Emperor Gaozu, Liu Bang's goals were probably limited to securing the Guanzhong region. Maybe he could have negotiated with Xiang Yu, but that window of opportunity was closing fast.
And when Xiang Yu finally arrives at Hangu Pass, expecting a smooth entry into the conquered Qin heartland, only to find it closed off, he's not happy.
To say he was furious is an understatement. Here he is, the victor, expecting a triumphant entry into the capital region, and he's met with closed gates. It was a direct challenge to his authority, a slap in the face.
And to make things even worse, he's coming off of this massive massacre at Xianyang. It's like a powder keg waiting to explode.
Exactly. The tension was incredibly high. And unfortunately, the defenses at Hangu Pass didn't hold up for long.
So Xiang Yu's forces overwhelmed the defenders and stormed the pass. It's like a scene from a movie.
It was a quick and decisive victory for Xiang Yu. Part of it was due to divided loyalties among the defenders. Many of them were from the Chu region, the same as Xiang Yu, and they might have been hesitant to fight against their fellow countrymen.
And then, as if things weren't bad enough for Liu Bang, one of his own advisors, a man named Cao Wusheng, decides to secretly contact Xiang Yu.
This betrayal was a major turning point. Cao Wusheng, who was Liu Bang's left military advisor, sent a secret message to Xiang Yu detailing Liu Bang's supposed plans. He told Xiang Yu that Liu Bang intended to declare himself king of Guanzhong, keep all the Qin treasures, and even appoint Xianyang, the surrendered Qin ruler, as his prime minister.
So this report, it basically confirms that Liu Bang's ambition, at least initially, was limited to the Guanzhong region.
Exactly. If Cao Wusheng had wanted to make Liu Bang seem even more threatening, he would have exaggerated his ambitions, but he didn't. He painted a picture of Liu Bang as a regional power grabber, which probably made Xiang Yu even angrier. It's like adding fuel to the fire.
What was Cao Wusheng thinking? Why betray Liu Bang like that?
It seems like pure self-interest. He saw which way the wind was blowing and decided to align himself with a stronger force. But the source also points out that Cao Wusheng held a pretty high rank in Liu Bang's army. He was essentially a division commander, so his words carried weight.
So Xiang Yu would have taken his report seriously. It wasn't just some random soldier spreading rumors. And what was Xiang Yu's reaction to this news?
Predictably, he was furious. He immediately started planning an attack on Liu Bang. But it was his advisor, Fan Zhang, who really pushed him over the edge.
Fan Zhang, the brilliant but sometimes ruthless strategist. What did he have to say?
Fan Zhang told Xiang Yu that Liu Bang's restraint, the fact that he hadn't immediately plundered Xianyang, was actually a sign of his cunning and ambition. He argued that Liu Bang was playing the long game, that he was a far greater threat than he appeared. The historical accounts even mentioned a story about Fan Zhang claiming to have seen an imperial aura above Liu Bang.
Talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. So Fan Zhang was convinced that Liu Bang was destined for greatness, and that made him even more dangerous.
Precisely. And this convinced Xiang Yu that he needed to act decisively. At this point, the reported troop numbers were heavily in Xiang Yu's favor. He claimed to have 1 million soldiers, although the actual number was probably closer to 400,000, still a massive force.
And Liu Bang?
His army was much smaller, probably around 100,000, although he claimed 200,000. The source suggests that he might have inflated his numbers, possibly by conscripting troops hastily, which, if true, would have violated the spirit of his own three-point law.
Wow. So we've gone from this moment of triumph with Liu Bang entering Xianyang to the brink of all-out war with a far more powerful rival, all in the span of a few short months. It's amazing how quickly things changed.
It's a whirlwind of events. We've seen ambition, strategic maneuvering, shocking brutality, fragile alliances, and outright betrayal. It's a story that has it all.
And hopefully this deep dive has given you, our listener, a better understanding of this incredibly pivotal period in Chinese history. It's a period that set the stage for the Han Dynasty, one of the most influential and enduring dynasties in Chinese history.
We've looked at the sources, the key players, their decisions, and the consequences of those actions. It's like a complex story, but one that offers valuable insights into the nature of power, leadership, and the choices that shape history.
So here's a final thought for you to consider. When you look at Liu Bang and Xiang Yu, these two figures who clashed at this critical juncture, whose approach do you think was ultimately more successful? Liu Bang, with his focus on winning over the people and establishing stability, or Xiang Yu, with his reliance on military might and decisive, often brutal action? It's a question that goes beyond this specific historical moment. It asks us to consider the different paths to power and their long-term impact.